Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving into a topic I know a lot of us think about, and that's longevity and the surprising science behind it.
Yeah.
We're going deep on a book called The Longevity Solution by Doctors James DiNicolantonio and Jason Fung.
Yes.
Now, what makes this book so interesting is that it's not just research. It's informed by their years of clinical experience working with people.
Right.
And that's exactly what we are going to unpack for you today.
Yeah.
We're not just after cool trivia or fun facts.
Right.
We want to give you practical insights that you can actually use.
And I think there's a lot of that in this book.
Yeah.
Some of it may surprise you.
Yeah, for sure. Some surprising insights. Like, we're always told to eat less for health and weight loss.
Yeah.
Well, this book kind of digs into how it might not just be about calories.
It's more than that.
Yeah.
It's the types of foods we're eating.
Exactly.
And another thing that the book talks about is how slowing down certain growth processes in the body might actually hold the key to longevity.
Slowing down growth.
Yeah.
That sounds counterintuitive.
It does, doesn't it?
Because we need to grow to be healthy.
Yeah, when you're younger.
Yeah.
But what the book argues is that, if you have excessive growth later in life, that might actually contribute to aging.
Okay, so it's about striking a balance.
It's finding that right balance.
Yeah.
And to understand that balance, we kind of need to go way back to, the basics.
Oh, okay.
Like evolution.
Okay, so let's go back in time.
Yeah.
What does evolution have to do with aging?
Well, the book starts with this concept called antagonistic pleiotropy.
That's a mouthful.
It is a bit of a mouthful, but basically it means that the same genes that are helpful for us early in life, like the genes that promote growth and reproduction, can actually become detrimental as we age.
Well, it's like a trade-off.
It is. It is a trade-off. So these genes, they help us survive long enough to pass on our genes.
Right.
But then they also contribute to our bodies, kind of wearing out afterwards.
Okay.
It's almost like evolution is saying, well, look, I just want to make sure you pass on your genes.
Right.
I don't really care what happens to you after that.
Right.
It's called the disposable soma theory. The body is the soma, and in a way it's disposable.
Oh, wow.
Once you reproduce.
Right, right.
So that's why you see this in nature. Like, you think about salmon.
Exactly.
They reproduce, and then they die.
Right.
All their energy goes into reproduction, and then that's it.
Right. They're spent.
They're done.
But then you have animals like elephants.
Right.
Who, have these long lifespans and reproduce much slower.
Much slower.
So where do humans fit into this?
That's a great question.
We don't just, die after having kids.
No, we don't.
Yeah.
And this is where it gets really interesting because,
Okay.
the book talks about how calorie restriction kind of throws a wrench into this disposable soma idea.
That's so.
Because studies have shown that animals that are on calorie-restricted diets tend to live longer, even though they have fewer resources overall. So it challenges this idea that, we're just programmed to decline after reproduction.
Okay, so there's more to it than just, evolutionary trade-offs.
Exactly.
What else is going on?
Well, the book suggests that calorie restriction may be tapping into our body's natural ability to repair and adapt. And this kind of relates to a concept you may have heard of called hormesis.
Hormesis.
It's kind of like weightlifting.
Yeah.
You lift weights, you create these tiny little tears in your muscles, then they rebuild stronger.
Yeah.
So hormesis is this idea that small doses of stress can actually lead to beneficial adaptations.
Okay.
And the book argues that calorie restriction may be working in a similar way.
So by eating less, we're actually prompting our bodies to become more resilient.
Potentially, yes.
Okay.
And this all ties back into that whole growth versus longevity thing we were talking about earlier.
Okay, so back to slowing down growth.
Yes.
How does that work? How does that play into longevity?
So the book gives a fascinating case study of the Laurent dwarfs of Ecuador.
Oh, yeah.
So these individuals, they have a genetic condition that limits their growth because they lack a growth hormone called IGF-1.
Right, and they have incredibly low rates of cancer and diabetes.
It's remarkable, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And they've seen similar things in mice studies.
Oh, wow.
Where they engineer mice to have very high growth hormone. They have shorter lifespans.
Wow.
And those with very low growth hormone live like 40% longer.
That's wild.
It is pretty wild.
Okay, so there's a link between reining in excessive growth and living longer.
Yeah.
But how do we actually do that?
That's a great question. And it leads us to this molecule called mTOR.
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 Okay, that sounds pretty intense.
It is. It's basically the control center for growth in our bodies.
Okay.
So think of mTOR like a nutrient sensor.
Yeah.
And when we eat, especially when we eat protein, mTOR gets activated. And it signals our body to grow.
So it's like the gas pedal for growth.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. It's essential when we're young, building muscle, building tissues.
Yeah, we need that.
But what the book suggests is that as we get older, if mTOR is constantly on, constantly activated, this might actually contribute to age-related decline.
Interesting. Why is that?
Well, one of the reasons is that mTOR inhibits another process called autophagy.
Autophagy. Okay.
Yeah, have you heard of that before?
I have.
So it's basically our body's cellular recycling system.
Right, the cleanup crew.
Yeah, the cleanup crew.
Yeah.
It breaks down all the damaged parts of our cells, keeps things running smoothly.
Got it.
So if mTOR is always on, then this cleanup crew can't do its job.
Right, and that buildup of damage can lead to aging.
Exactly.
So what we eat,
yeah,
especially protein, directly affects this mTOR.
Directly affects it.
Okay, now we're getting into the good stuff.
Now we're getting into the nitty-gritty.
All right, I'm ready.
You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, so this is where the book really challenges conventional wisdom about diet. It's not just about calories anymore. It's about understanding how different types of food are impacting these very complex processes in our bodies.
Right.
And that brings us to the protein puzzle.
The protein puzzle.
The protein puzzle.
I'm hooked. Tell me more.
All right, we'll dive into that after a quick break.
Okay.
We'll be right back to talk about how much protein is too much and what we can do to make sure we're eating for longevity, not against it.
Can't wait.
All right, we'll be back in a flash.
All right, see you soon. Okay, so we're back, and we were talking about the protein puzzle.
Yes, the protein puzzle.
I'm ready to put the pieces together. What do we got?
Well, right before the break, we were talking about mTOR, that control center in our cells that really gets activated when we eat protein.
Right, and how it might need to be, carefully managed as we age.
Exactly, and that brings us to one of the, I think, really surprising parts of the book, which is the idea that even protein,
which we tend to think of as this good thing, might actually need to be carefully managed if we want to live longer.
Okay.
So it's not about cutting it out completely.
Right.
It's about being strategic.
Strategic. Okay, how?
So the book delves into, animal protein versus plant protein.
Right.
And you see animal protein, the stuff we find in meat and dairy, is generally higher in certain amino acids.
Okay.
Those are the building blocks of protein. And those specific amino acids are the ones that are really potent at stimulating mTOR and IGF-1.
Right, another one of those growth hormones we talked about.
Exactly.
Right.
So that's great for building muscle when we're younger.
Right.
But maybe not so ideal if we want to, really think about longevity as we age.
Okay. So it's all about finding that balance again.
Yeah, it's about finding that balance and trade-off.
Right, right.
And so plant protein, on the other hand, tends to have a lower impact on those growth pathways.
Okay.
So it still provides you with those building blocks.
Those essential amino acids.
Got it.
But it doesn't sort of have that same punch as animal protein.
Okay, so does that mean we need to all go vegetarian if we want to live longer?
Well, not necessarily.
Okay.
The book proposes something called protein cycling.
Protein cycling?
Yeah.
What is that?
It's about strategically varying your protein intake.
Oh.
So maybe having periods where you have lower protein intake.
Okay.
And then bringing it back up to more normal levels.
So kind of like giving your body a break from always being in that growth mode.
Exactly, like a break from that gas pedal being pushed down all the time.
Okay, I like that.
And that way you might be able to mimic some of those benefits of calorie restriction that we talked about earlier without having to be quite as strict.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good.
With your overall calorie intake.
I like that.
I think a lot of people, when they hear about reducing protein, especially in the context of wanting to live longer, they're worried about muscle loss.
Yeah, because we want to be active as we age.
Exactly. Strong.
We want to be functional.
Exactly.
You don't want to be frail.
Right. So how do we balance that?
So that's a really important point, and the book addresses this head on.
Okay.
And I think the key thing to remember is that when we're talking about protein cycling, we're not talking about these super low protein levels all the time.
Got it.
It's about strategic fluctuations.
Okay. More of an ebb and flow.
Exactly.
Okay.
An ebb and flow. And remember, we talked about how our bodies prioritize fat burning when we're fasting,
right,
which helps preserve muscle mass.
Right.
So you can imagine combining protein cycling with some type of fasting regimen.
Okay, yeah.
Could be a really powerful approach.
So we've got the calorie restriction, the protein cycling. what other pieces of this longevity puzzle does the book talk about?
Well, this might surprise you, but the book actually recommends enjoying coffee,
Really?
tea,
Oh,
and even wine.
wine. So my evening glass of wine could be helping me live longer.
Potentially, yes.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Of course, there's a caveat there.
Right. Moderation, moderation, moderation.
Right. Okay.
It highlights the potential benefits of these things.
Yeah.
But it really emphasizes that if you overdo it,
Right.
you're going to negate those benefits.
Gotcha. A glass with dinner, not the whole bottle.
Exactly.
What about coffee and tea?
So coffee and tea, the book says, enjoy them.
Okay.
But watch out for all that added sugar
Right.
and all those sweeteners that a lot of people tend to add.
Like, guilty of that.
These beverages have these naturally occurring compounds that have all these health benefits.
Okay.
But if you're loading them up with sugar,
Right.
obviously it's going to counteract that.
So we've got coffee, tea, wine in moderation. What else?
Okay, so the next piece of the puzzle might also surprise you.
Okay.
The book recommends optimizing your salt and magnesium intake.
Salt. I thought we were supposed to be avoiding salt.
Right. That's what we've all been told.
Isn't it bad for blood pressure and all that?
Yeah, I've been hearing that for decades.
Yeah.
Low salt, low salt, low salt.
Right.
But the book really pushes back on that conventional wisdom and presents a lot of evidence to suggest that adequate salt intake is actually important for our health.
Wow. Okay. This is really interesting because it's going against everything I thought I knew.
Yeah, it's definitely counterintuitive.
Yeah.
And so they kind of go into the history of how this whole low-salt dogma came to be and what the current research is suggesting.
All right. What about magnesium? Why is that included?
Well, magnesium is this mineral that's involved in so many processes in our bodies.
Okay.
Everything from our muscles to our nerves to our blood sugar control. Magnesium is essential.
Got it.
And unfortunately, a lot of people are actually deficient in magnesium.
Really?
Yeah, and the book explains how magnesium and salt actually work together and how optimizing both of those is really important.
Okay, so don't fear salt and make sure you're getting enough magnesium.
I like it.
Okay, got it. What's the last piece of this puzzle?
All right, so the last but not least piece of the longevity puzzle is embracing natural fats.
Ah, back to the fats.
Back to the fats.
This book has really made me rethink my whole approach to fats.
Me too. It's incredible how much misinformation has surrounded fats for so long.
Yeah.
And they really make a compelling case to go back to those natural fats that humans have been consuming for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Olive oil, avocados, nuts, fatty fish.
Right.
These are all great sources of natural fat.
And then ditching the processed vegetable oils and trans fats.
Exactly. Those are the real enemies when it comes to fat.
Yeah.
Not the natural fats.
Okay, so this puzzle's starting to come together now.
Yeah.
We've got, calorie restriction or fasting. We've got protein cycling. We've got coffee, tea, bit of wine.
Yeah.
Optimizing our salt and magnesium.
Yep.
And embracing natural fats.
And embracing those natural fats.
It sounds like a pretty balanced way to live.
It does, and what I love about this book is that it provides you with all these practical tools that you can actually use to implement these changes.
Exactly. It's not just theory.
Yeah.
It's like, here's how you actually do it.
Exactly.
I like that.
So speaking of real-world examples, I'm really curious to hear a little bit more about these blue zones we touched on earlier.
Oh, yeah, the blue zones.
These are those regions around the world with those exceptionally long-lived populations.
Right. These are the centenarians, and these are the people that are just, living long, healthy lives.
Exactly. And I think they provide such fascinating insights into how our lifestyle, our environment can really impact longevity.
Okay, let's do it. Let's dive into the blue zones.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we're back and ready to explore these blue zones.
The blue zones, yeah, they're so fascinating.
Yeah. What is it about these places that makes people live so long?
Well, each blue zone is unique,
Right.
different cultures, different traditions. But they all share certain things in common that seem to contribute to the exceptional health and longevity of the people living there.
So it's not just one magic ingredient.
It's not one magic thing. No, it's more like a whole recipe.
A whole recipe. Okay, I like that.
And what's so cool about studying these blue zones is that they show us that there are many different ways to age well,
Right.
There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And we can learn from these diverse cultures and see what lessons we can apply to our own lives.
Absolutely. Okay, let's take a closer look at a few of them.
Okay.
First up, Okinawa, Japan.
Oh, Okinawa.
What makes this place a longevity hotspot?
Well, Okinawa has one of the highest concentrations of centenarians in the world.
Centenarians.
Yeah, people who live to be 100 or older.
Wow, that's amazing.
Isn't that incredible? And their traditional diet is really interesting.
Okay.
It's low in calories.
Okay.
And very rich in plant-based foods.
Like what kinds of foods?
So they eat a lot of sweet potatoes.
Okay.
Vegetables, tofu, seaweed.
Lots of good stuff.
Yeah. And they also practice this really cool concept called Hari Hachibu.
Hari Hachibu, what is that?
It's a mindful eating practice.
Okay.
Where they eat until they're about 80% full.
Oh, so they stop before they're totally stuffed.
Exactly. So they're not necessarily counting calories or anything like that.
Right.
But they're very in tune with their body's signals, and they know when to stop.
That's something we could all learn from.
Yeah, I think so too.
What about other aspects of their lifestyle? Is it all about diet?
You know, diet plays a big role for sure.
Yeah.
But they also have incredibly strong social connections, a real sense of community.
Okay.
And they stay active throughout their lives.
Like, what do they do to stay active?
They garden, they walk, they engage in these traditional activities that keep them moving.
So it's a very holistic approach to well-being.
It really is.
Okay. Okinawa's going on my bucket list. What about another blue zone?
Okay.
How about Sardinia, Italy?
Ah, Sardinia.
What's their secret?
So Sardinia is another great example.
Oh, yeah?
Their traditional diet is often described as frugal.
Frugal?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So they eat a lot of vegetables, legumes, whole grains.
Okay.
They have a lot of sheep's milk cheese.
Okay.
And of course, they enjoy a glass or two of red wine with their meals.
Yeah, the Mediterranean lifestyle.
Exactly. And, you know, we're seeing that red wine come up again.
Yeah, in moderation, of course.
In moderation, exactly.
Right.
The Sardinians also have a very active lifestyle. You know, they walk a lot, they work outdoors, they live in this mountainous terrain.
Okay.
So they're getting a lot of natural movement.
Yeah.
And just like the Okinawans, they have strong social networks and a close-knit community.
So we're starting to see some common threads here.
We are.
This emphasis on whole, unprocessed foods.
Right.
Moderate calorie intake.
Yep.
Physical activity and social connections.
Exactly. And it's so interesting to see how these themes are expressed in different ways.
Yeah.
In these different cultures.
Totally. Okay, I want to touch on one more blue zone before we wrap up.
Okay.
What about one a little closer to home? Loma Linda, California.
Ah, Loma Linda. That's a really unique one.
Yeah, what's different about Loma Linda?
Well, Loma Linda is interesting because it's a community of Seventh-day Adventists.
Okay.
And this religious group is known for having a very health-conscious lifestyle.
Okay.
They follow a largely vegetarian diet.
Okay.
With lots of whole grains, fruits, vegetables, nuts, legumes.
That's very
Very plant-based. And they also abstain from smoking and alcohol.
Okay, so a little bit different approach than our Sardinian friends.
A little bit different, but, you know, it just goes to show there's no one right way to live a long and healthy life.
Exactly. Many different paths can lead to the same destination.
Exactly.
And I think that's a really great takeaway.
Yeah.
It's about finding what works for you.
Yeah.
And incorporating these principles into your own unique lifestyle.
I think that's one of the most empowering messages of this book.
Absolutely.
That we have so much more control over our health and longevity than we often think.
Well, this book, The Longevity Solution, has really been eye-opening.
Me too.
You know, it's given me a whole new perspective on aging.
Yeah, it's not just about living longer, it's about living better.
Yeah, making choices that support our well-being at every stage of life.
I love that.
And challenging those old assumptions.
Yes.
About what it means to age.
Absolutely. Embracing what science is teaching us.
Yes.
About our potential for health and vitality as we age.
Absolutely. It's a very exciting time to be exploring these ideas.
It really is.
So if you're intrigued by what you've heard today, I really encourage you to check out The Longevity Solution for yourself.
Yeah, great book.
You know, we've just scratched the surface here.
Yeah, so much more to explore.
So much more.
You'll find it as fascinating as we have.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us for the deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time, keep seeking, keep learning, and keep living your best life.
Did you get any of that?